Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Manifesting Happiness with myself, Esther McCann, aka Miss Manifester. On this podcast, we are talking all things manifestation, mindset, and spirituality to create your best life, but without all the toxic positivity. Today, I am joined by my beautiful friend, and she's all the way in New Zealand, which is why we're in our PJs, and also because we just cannot be fucked. Pippa Leslie, how are you doing, Pip?
Hey Esther, it's so good to be here. I just was like, I don't give a shit. I'm so comfy and warm. It's early here in New Zealand, so I'm like, oh now fuck it.
I know. I like you. You've got it early. You're like you've just woke up, and I'm like I'm just going to bed. So we were both like, oh, let's just be ourselves, be our most authentic, comfy, warm selves. Plus, and big congratulations that are in order. You're 18 weeks pregnant. So, girl, you don't want to be getting all like fancy.
Dolled up for an interview.
Oh, you just want to be comfy, right?
Yes, and I'm very comfy and warm, and because I'm originally from the UK, but it's pretty cold. It's not cold. It's winter here, but it's getting cooler, and we have the heat pump on, so I'm really cozy. It's great.
Yes, snug as a bug in a rug. I'll just give you a quick introduction. Pippa is a certified somatic trauma informed coach. She is also trained in QHHT and she's a Reiki master as well. She is also the co-host of the Wisdom of Womanhood podcast. If you've been on the podcast for a while and listening to episodes up till now, I believe they've all been really, really powerful. But one of the things that we haven't really talked about that much has been a lot of people's personal manifesting stories and kind of their journeys with getting some of the things that they've wanted. I mean, maybe that has been there and threaded through, but I feel like that manifesting magic hasn't been there, and I really want to inspire you guys. And I just think Pip's story is just amazing. She's done so much, come so far, and has had such a like transformational journey over the last few years. And Pip, I just really want to tap into all of that juice with you today.
I know. It's when I tell people about my story when I meet a new person in New Zealand, they go, what brought you to New Zealand? I'm like, okay, do you want the long story or the short story? And then they're just gobsmacked. They're literally gobsmacked. They're like, how did you get through it? How did you manage? I would have give up, and that's the take, not giving up on your dreams, because I want to stop using that word want, because the universe doesn't like that word want. So it knew I deserved what I desired. So that kept my faith.
Mm, where shall we start? Do you want to start like at the beginning, or do you want to talk about kind of when you met your beautiful husband, Chris, and like what a catalyst that has been in the big transformation in your journey? Where do
I,
you?
th I think Well, I think because it's such a long story, I'm going to give you like the pinpoints, like the milestones of it. So imagine me 5, 6 years ago. I just left toxic, crappy relationship. I'd gone to Australia. It was like an eat, pray, love type of story. I just wanted to go find myself, go to Australia, have some great sex, and just be myself. And I remember coming across Manifestation Babe, and she's great. And I remember she was doing this like calling your soul partner, calling your dream partner. And deep down, I've always known what type of guy I've wanted. And I always settled. And I used to piss myself off that I used to settle. But then I would leave when I wasn't happy. So that was always the case. If I wasn't happy and something wasn't right, I'd be like, I'm done. So I was in Australia, and I remember just doing this soulmate I was on the beach doing it actually in Burleigh on the Gold Coast. And she said, you need to be specific. Like the universe wants specifics. And I was like, so I was getting into manifestation, and I was friends with Esther at the time, and she's gone through the whole journey with me. So it's kind of like doing that practice. I was like, oh yeah. It's just because manifestation, it's a skill. It is a skill, but it's an innate wisdom as well. So there's both elements to that. So I was writing a list of everything I wanted in a man, and he's actually in the house right now. So he's over there. And it was specific. And he like obviously the list is a small portion of who he is, but the most things that were like on there was just insane. I even wrote penis size. That's kind of my little funny story that I put when I tell people.
But I love that. And I've got other clients who do that. They're like, they were like, I'm manifesting the D and what they want in the D because it's important to them. And I think this is it. Everyone's got their own preferences of what they want.
Yeah.
And yeah, be specific with that. Like there's
Well, it made it fun.
yeah,
Manifestation for a lot of people can be like, people can dread it because the desperate energy's there, isn't it? Like the desperate, I really want my man, I really want my woman. And I realized through my manifestation journey is that desperate energy doesn't get you anywhere. It really doesn't. It pulls you further down into that low energy. So I just remember thinking like, you know what, like it'll come when it's meant to. And I just had fun with it. And that was the key for me, was having fun. And it was quite interesting because I wrote this list. There's too much to go into detail, but if I could explain, that first few months of meeting Chris was just like the universe was just putting us together. There was no like buts or ifs. It was just we were slammed right together. And I remember 2 weeks after I did that list, Chris actually came over to New Zealand to see his kids, and I didn't know who he was at the time. And we actually worked out that I was in Sydney watching planes come in every day because I used to walk down there every morning. I watched his plane come in, and I didn't know it was him at the time. So he passed me, like he literally passed me overhead. So it was 2 weeks after I wrote that list, and I had this calling. That's why it's really important to follow your callings, because when you follow those callings and those things that are just like a fuck yes in the body, it leads you down more paths than you realize. So if I hadn't have followed the calling to go back to uni to do an animal behavior degree, which was just random because I love animals, I've got a business degree. I got accepted into Manchester Uni to do a master's in animal behavior. I wouldn't have downloaded an animal podcast, which was Chris's. So there's just all these nuggets of like your tapestry. Like, so you've got like, your career, you've got your branch of your husband or your wife, and you've got all these different things, all these little dots. Like I always think them as like going across the river, like little stepping stones, like to get to the other side. And then when Chris and I connected, it was very friendly, no expectation. I didn't even know it was him at the time. I just was like, I love your podcast, blah, blah, blah. And then it just became this like intertwining of like, I can't stop speaking to this man. He was in Los Angeles, and I'm in a little small town in Wigan, northwest of England. And I'm like, how is this going to work? And he actually thought I was Australian at first because I was in Australia at the time. And then it just became this, like I flew to LA and it was love at first sight. I had 5 days with him, and that was kind of like, just a whirlwind. I remember crying at the airport. It was literally like a movie. I felt like I was in my own Eat, Pray, Love movie, like just like I really do. I just was like, I kept thinking, like, is this real? Like I was pinching myself, like, is this real? And then it was, yeah. But then what happened was our relationship developed through COVID. COVID hit that year after, and we had 2 months apart because he couldn't get over to England because Trump had blocked the borders. And then he flew over in the May, and we had 6 months in the UK, and that's where we got to meet Esther. We went down to Glastonbury a lot. 6 months were really, really amazing to, get to know each other, and he got to know my family, and I'm really grateful for those 6 months. And then he flew to New Zealand because he flew to New Zealand, and I remember dropping him off at the airport, and I was like, I'll see you in a few months. And it literally was 18 months. We didn't see each other physically didn't see each other for 18 months. And then we reunited 2 years ago. So that was May, his birthday, May 4th in 2022. We reunited in New Zealand. They opened the borders. So I spent 8 weeks in Australia because they opened up to Australia first. So I flew to Australia for 8 weeks, stayed with a friend. And then we reunited. And he proposed to me when I came through the arrivals door at Auckland. So it was like magical, and yeah, it's just been absolute magical ever since. And we've been through some really, life does throw curveballs at you, and I think the unit. Well, I think it's you really. I think you and the universe throw yourself curveballs to, what's the word I want to use? To remind you of your strength, and to remind you of like life can be shit and crap at times, but you've got to stay strong and remain in the faith that, life does happen in the midst of everything. And then now we got married. I'm pregnant, so I'm due in November. And it's funny because my due date's 11/11, and that's when we first started dating. So
I really want you to have your 11/11 like baby.
imagine if he's born at like 11/11 in the morning. I'm going to be like, right, I'm done. I give up completely. I surrender.
Can you imagine if you're like, I don't know, like you're looking at the clock and you're going, fuck, like I've got to time it just right. Like Pip, like it's just crazy because I remember when you were going through all of this with the lockdown thing and you were going, when are they going to open these borders? And I think what I take from that story, you know, like in the online, I'll just say in the online space or in the spiritual space, there's a lot of stuff there, isn't there, where they're like, oh, if it's not working out for you, then it's kind of not meant to be. And what I see when I look at your story is exactly what you said about don't give up, have faith, kind of you create your reality. I think to hold out for those 18 months and to have not just given up is just phenomenal. That you is, to me, it's a testament to your relationship with Chris.
Oh yeah, there's times where like that what you've just said is perfect to what I do in my work as well, because relationships will get tough, and that what we call the honeymoon phase, which I think is BS. All the newness rubs off, and I feel like people then go, oh, it gets tough. Oh, this isn't like the love I wanted, and this isn't like the all perfect amazingness. People have trauma and they have insecurities, and Chris and I's insecurities came out a lot being separated, as you can imagine. You know, we didn't have any physical connection, no sex, no touch, no nothing. And our insecurities were tested, but through that 18 months, those insecurities were healed at the same time. So when we came back together 2 years ago, it was like we'd done so much inner work together. It just made, I don't know, it just shifted so much. Like and we continue to do the work, you know, we're not a perfect couple. We're like, I would say we've definitely got a relationship that is really deep on communication. Like we communicate so much and we can't hide anything from each other, you know, because we just love each other so much. And like if I feel off or he's off, it's just we know. We respect each other's boundaries, we respect each other's space. You know, we know how to handle our triggers, we know how to handle our triggers with each other. And it just flows like it does. And there's been times where it has been hard. You know, last year was a really tough year for both of us. You know, moving, we manifested our dream home, which I absolutely adore. Like it's just our dream house. But in the midst of the things that we manifest, there was shit going on too. So last year, I had my first pregnancy and I miscarried at 8, 9 weeks. And then a few months later, we moved in the house, which was just amazing. It was just like, yeah, it's like, I don't want to say I can't believe it, because I can believe it, because I just saw this house like in my vision. And when it came on the market, I was like, is that real? Is that even like, that's the house that I envisioned? Like, it's just crazy. And then when we went, so Chris lost both of his fathers within like a month of each other last year. So he's got a stepfather and a biological father, and they both passed away. And we had to fly out quite urgently to America. I mean, only been in the house like 3 weeks, and unfortunately, our house was broken into when we were away. So having that in the midst of all this chaos of grief and loss, you know, it did shake us. It like that's the thing with relationships. There's going to be things that throw at you. You're gonna, you know, loss is going to be part of your relationship when you lose parents or loved ones. There's going to be shit that gets thrown at you that's like a housebreaking. You know, that was of a sexual nature too, so that had that spin on it. You know, it wasn't really like anything was taken. It was more of a you know, perverted kind of you know, sexual kind of energy, which that's all been sorted now, and he's doing what he needs to do to repent, as I would say. But if the house wasn't, yeah, you have to, for me, I'm always good at seeing the good in something. So instead of just going into that, oh, that victim of, I mean, the victim mode is it's a natural process, I think. Like you do fall into it quite easily, and there's nothing against that. Like I'm not here to judge anyone, because it is a natural human process to feel that. But for me, I don't want to stay in that victim mentality, because it's not, it's just a shit. It's just shit. That's all I'm going to say about that. It's just shit. So like, coming out of the victim mentality and thinking, what's the blessing here? Not the lesson. I'm not a big fan of saying that life is a lesson, because I feel like life is not, it's an experience. There's experiences to be had. And I remember thinking, like, what is the blessing here? And we just moved into the neighborhood, so I didn't really know anybody. And the guy who broke in, he's well known in the community. He's done things like this before, but he's never been caught. So to be caught was kind of a good thing. And everyone was like, "Oh God, you just moved in and blah blah blah." But what it's done is it's brought the community so close together. Obviously, there's a lot of people who live very not old-fashioned lives, but they're very like old school. No cameras on the property, and it is sad. Like they've had to get cameras, alarm systems put in, but it's shook up the community to look after each other, and we're really close now. And I literally said on one of the meetings, I'm glad that I was the catalyst for that. And everyone looks at me like I'm a crazy person, like, because people don't understand this whole process of, I'm not going to sit here in victim mentality for months and months, because where's that going to get me? Where is that going to get me? Because the ripple effect of that is I'm in a low vibration. I feel like shit. And you can't manifest from a place like that. Well, you can manifest from a place like that, but not the things you want. It's like, it's that icky energy. So moving through that as a couple, that shook us so much last year. Like, miscarriage, loss of two dads, and then the house break. And it was like, even Chris that one night said, "What the fuck, universe? Like, okay, we get it. Like, you don't have to send any more trials. Like, we get it." And I don't even think it was a trial. I just think it was, this is the first time I've ever said this out loud. I wrote it in my journal, and I'm very authentic with how I deal with my life. I feel like I did manifest it in a way, because I said to Chris about 2 years ago, when I was moving into like my study for being trauma informed coach and doing my degree and stuff, I've had a really good life. And I never felt like I've got this, like, not sob story, but I've not had this like, oh, I had abusive parents, or, I've never had this like story. Yeah, I was bullied as a teenager. I mean, what kid wasn't, that, I've said to myself, like, I felt like I manifest something to talk, like, I've been through this now. I've been through a miscarriage, so I can relate to people. But I also realized that I don't have to go through shitty things to be a good coach. I don't need to go through shitty things to be an amazing healer. And that was the shift for me, is like, I didn't need to have a sob story to be a powerful coach, a powerful mentor, whatever, like, I'm here to do good. I'm here to help people manifest. I'm here to help people just release trauma and heal trauma and live a more peaceful life. And that I don't need to have these extra, like, oh, well, I've been through that. Oh, it's just, I can relate to people anyway.
Yeah.
I'm relatable, I'm supportive, I'm warm, I'm loving, and people love that about me.
So true. You don't have to have a sob story, a sob story to be relatable, but you
Yeah.
also don't have to have a sob story to be then worthy
Yeah.
of the better times. Not at all. And I think the piece about, like both Chris's, dad's dying is almost just unbelievable. Like you can't really write it. Like it sounds genuinely, like you say, like that, the break-in, the miscarriage, all of that cumulatively, it's just like there's that sort of toxic manifesting mentality, isn't it? Of like, oh, well, we manifest everything. So it makes you sit there and go, what the fuck have I done? Like, what the fuck's wrong with me? Like, why is all this happening to me? But I think especially where loss, like death and loss is concerned, I think that's out that I think that's out of our hands massively.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, we can sit here and say, we are manifesting and we are creating our best life. But when those things come around, which they inevitably will, and we don't know, like we just have to equip ourselves with all this mindset work and trust and faith in the divine and the turning of the wheel, because otherwise we do just absolutely get sucked in to just, like you said, you could have just gone into an absolute victim spiral and you didn't. But maybe, I don't know, do you think maybe a few years ago you might have done that and been
Oh
like,
God, yeah. I would have been feeling sorry for myself now, but I would have been like, oh God, poor me. And in the midst of, after Chris lost both his dads, there was this, and we've spoke about this, Chris and I, because we communicate so well. There was this kind of like, what's the word? Like, he needed me and I needed him. So there was this little bit of a, not power struggle, but there was like, I'm more needy than Chris, and he knows that. He'll laugh because I'm just more needy. So there was an element of like, that happening, and then it was like, well, he needs me, and it was just this little bit of a battle between like, oh, well, I need you more than I need you, and we spoke about it, and we just had to intertwine together and be like, and in the midst of actually going over to America, which was a really hard trip for both of us, we lost friends as well. We lost a friendship, which was really challenging in itself, and it still is, to be honest. It really is, because we were going through something so much, and Chris and I have tendencies to be people pleasers. I don't like saying that we are a people pleaser, because that confirms your identity. So that's just something for people to watch when you are talking to people, is like saying I am a people pleaser is saying I am. What you say after I am is really important. So Chris and I have tendencies to be people pleasers. So in the midst of all this chaos, we're trying to keep friends happy at the same time. And it just backfired. It really backfired. And it's a lesson for us to learn from where we put our energy in that space of, it's about like, if I knew what I knew now, I would have said, I'd love to help you, but I really can't right now. I don't have the capacity to help you. And I think that's the key, is that we want to help so many people, and we just can't do it all. And I think with the manifesting story and with everything that we went through, I do think like you said about loss, like loss is a part of life. And I think when we can't physically, we're not invincible. We're not, like, we're just not. We'd love to be, but we're just not. And it was Wayne Dyer who said on one of his talks, if someone was to give you a wand A and a wand B, a wand A was you can wish it and everything would come to manifestation instantly. So whatever you wanted, the new car, the new house, the new husband, whatever. Wand B is whatever happens in your life, you always have inner peace. 5 years ago, one day, please. Thank you. Now it's like inner peace, because you think about, if you've got inner peace, no matter what turmoil's happening, you're still going to be in that beautiful energy to pull in everything that you desire. And I think that's the whole point, isn't it? Is honestly, our thoughts are so insanely powerful, and I don't think we realize, like, I mean, Esther's probably spoke about this loads on her YouTube and her Instagram. I know she has. Like, you could be thinking about an old friend you've not seen in 5 years, and then you see them in the street, or they text you. You're like, what the fuck? I've just been talking about you. One thing that was really insane, which I want to share about timing. Chris and I had gone to Canada in September because he was starting a new job. So we went to see the firm. And when we were flying back from Toronto back over to California, we thought it'd just be a 2-hour check-in, because it's just Canada to America. So we didn't realize we had to be a 3-hour check-in. So we got there a little bit later than we should have done, which is very rare for me because I'm very organized, and and we missed the check-in by like 10 minutes. And I was really upset, and I was like, oh, can this trip get any worse? Blah. I was like, rah. And the people in the airport weren't really helpful, and one of them was quite rude to me. So I was just in tears, and I was just like, oh, I was just like, at that point, done. I was like, I'm done. I want to go home. But I remember, like, we had to buy another flight, which then cost money. And I was just like, universe, what? I remember saying in the airport, what do you want from me? Like, what is it? Like, and you have those moments, you really do have those moments where you're just like, what the fuck are you doing to me? Like, and we were sat, so we got our next flight, and we had to wait a couple of hours. If we hadn't have missed that flight, that first flight, which was like a red-eye flight, we wouldn't have caught the guy in the house on the camera.
Because you would have been on the flight, and you wouldn't.
Yes, and it gives me goosebumps saying it.
Yeah.
So you don't know what you've got to trust every single stepping stone that you are on, because like I said, even though I was so pissed off in that moment that we'd missed our flight, we had to pay another $600 to book another flight. I literally would have been on a plane, and I wouldn't have got the notification that someone was in the house on my phone, because it was early hours of the morning in New Zealand at the time. So it was like I had to call my neighbor and say there's a guy in the house, and the police all got involved. So obviously when I got on the second flight, because we rang the police, we were just boarding. We were just getting ready to board the flight, and I got a notification saying person detected on camera, and I was like, what the F? And it was just made me realize, like, obviously the process of that, the process of, the sadness, and the people on the airline were amazing. They let me and Chris sit together, and they gave me free wine. I was just like, I was like, oh, thank you so much. And the guy next to me, you could see on the camera, because I was watching, because he was hiding in the house and stuff, so I could watch. And the police were there, and it was just very traumatic. And I had to sit with it and heal that part of me. Like coming home to my brand new house, my dream house, I thought, you aren't ruining this dream house for me. No way. So I had a whole ceremony in the house. I saged the whole house. I still sage it, regularly because it's an older house. I just thought, no, like we can let something ruin our journey by like saying, hey, like that's shit and that's it. Like even when we lose a loved one, that can, like, grief is different for every single person, but can we see the blessing in the turmoil? That's the whole point, is it? Because they exist together. They exist together. There's no, even when we talk about duality, like I don't even think there's a duality. They just exist together.
It's just one. And I think with grief, it's so difficult because when you're in it, and it's very hard when you're in it to see that. But I look back now on, I think about my mum passing and what that did in terms of, like, as a catalyst for so many things. And I just think, gosh, I feel like that absolutely had to happen for me
Oh,
to.
well, if she was alive now and still here, like where would you be? What would your life look like?
I'd I'd have gone to uni. There'd be a lot of other things, like I just really don't know. And I don't know if I would have. I don't think I'd be here right now doing this work.
Yeah.
And yet, like we talked about it on the previous podcast episode, we talked about purposes. This is absolutely one of my purposes, is doing this. Exactly the same for you. Um, but I honestly am not sure if I would have come round to this timeline had that not happened. I truly believe it was in the orchestrated tapestry of, like, I've got the best laid plans with this part, but I genuinely do feel like the universe was like, no, there's another timeline. And I guess that's the difficult question of, isn't it, of like, how much free will have we got? Or are there some things that are meant to happen? But I still think how you choose to navigate it is your free will and your power.
Yeah, I remember asking that question with manifestation because I remember saying to myself, I think I asked you this question years ago. What's the point manifesting if everything's going to just come in our life anyway? Like, what's the point doing it?
Mm.
And I came to realize, I could wake up tomorrow and choose that's a really important word, choose to be a completely different person. I could choose to be a bitch, or choose to just be mean, choose to go start taking drugs, start, drinking alcohol. But I don't feel it in my body. Like I don't, but there's that choice, isn't there? Like, there's a choice in everything. Like there's a choice in grief. Do we let grief consume us? Do we let grief just completely, like, yeah, that's the only word I can use really, is consume us and just choose. I won't even say, I don't think you can choose wrong. I really don't. I don't like using that word, wrong, because you can never choose wrong. You can only choose what you choose, and that will lead you down the path you're meant to go. So I always think, like, when clients go, God, I made the wrong choice. I'm like, no, you didn't. You made the choice that was for you in the moment.
Mm.
Because there's this element of like being right and wrong. And again, that duality of right and wrong. Is there a duality of right and wrong? No, they exist together. It's just getting past the whole. I mean, I could go really woo-woo because that's just me. I'm very deep and spiritual, but manifestation is very scientific. So if you're more science-brained, go listen to Joe Dispenza or Greg Braden or people like that, because they kind of really talk about it in a sciencey way, like physics and the law of physics and all the different laws of the universe. But it's just, if I could pull my journals out from the last 5 years, there's just things that you go, what the hell? Like, you just can't explain it. And I even writing in a journal, I just said I can't write it down in a journal because the words can't explain it in word form, in language. The feeling, the feeling was there. And that's really important because I think people just think, oh, if I think positively and think about my dream house all day long, it's going to show up. And that's why I didn't really like The Secret, because he just thought of an elephant and the elephant just showed up. It's like, oh, hi. It's the feeling, isn't it? It's the feeling of how you feel. It's, you know what I mean? Like, I love The Secret. And that's where I'm
Yeah,
grateful for The
I know
Secret because it spun me into I was like, oh,
the
and
secret
it
is
really,
a catalyst for so many people.
exactly. Like it was.
Catalyst.
if you don't think of anything like that, if you're like kind of new into like mindset, things like that, which I was, The Secret was great. And I was like, oh, this is great. Like I can just think about this and blah, blah, blah. But if you're feeling like shit day in, day out, not doing any inner work, not meditating, not going into nature, not doing all these things, like whatever it is, you're just going to be like, well, manifestation doesn't work. And then that becomes your reality because you affirm that you're affirming that manifestation doesn't work.
Yeah, and I think everybody's looking though, like this so comes back to what you just said about Wayne Dyer and the wands, and with one day what you're doing is you're with saying I want this and I want, you know, the car and the house and the partner and all this. What with that you're saying I'm placing all my inner peace on the external,
Yeah.
in a certain way, whereas if you find inner peace without that external like stuff, then you know eventually reality will line up to you anyway, and you'll have inner peace. So what's not to love about that?
Well, that's the key. That's exactly what you've just said is how many of you listening have said, oh, I'll be so happy when I get that house. I'll be so happy when I get that dream partner. We've all said it. We've all been there. I'm not sitting here saying that I'm a guru and I'm
Oh,
perfect 'cause I'm not. But can you look around in your life right now and say, you know, I'm so grateful for this and this and this and this, and find the happiness now. That's what Eckhart Tolle talks about, is now, the power of now. Because if you're saying I'll be happy in 6 months' time when this new job comes, or I'll be happy when, you know, I meet that dream guy and we get married, or I'll be happy when I go on this travel trip, you're not in the present moment. You're literally going like 6 months down the line being like, I'll be happy when that happens. And that isn't how we manifest. We manifest by going, you know, if your life looks pretty shit right now, like, okay, do you have fresh food to eat? Do you have clothing? Do you have a roof over your head? Do you have family that loves you? Do you have friends? You know, like find, even if you can't find things around you, like now if I look around the house or where I'm sat, go into nature. You know, go into nature and say, oh my God, like how beautiful is this? Like there's always something to be grateful for. And I think that's what that's what I took from The Secret, is that gratitude. You know, gratitude for what we already have. Because it is like when we start saying, I'll be happy when, I'll be happy when, I'll be happy when, I'll have inner peace when, I'll have inner peace when. It's like the whole Saint Francis of Assisi, you know, like it's quite funny because I've just finished a book. I can't pronounce her surname because she's from Vietnam, but she's called Pauline. It's spelled Nguyen, and it's the Spiritual Entrepreneur book. And we're interviewing her next week on the podcast, and just listening to her, you know, she talks about that, like that inner peace, like St. Francis' prayer is make me an instrument of thy peace. But then she talks about that in a more deeper level of like, peace is already within you. You don't go out externally looking for it.
that's the whole thing though about like, again going very biblical, it's like Jesus talking about how the kingdom of heaven's already within you. Like stop sort of seeking it out there. And exactly what you said then about if you're always going I'll be happy when, or I'll feel XYZ when, you're literally sending out a signal to say I'm not happy now.
Yeah.
I'm not fulfilled now. And it all comes from tapping into that, finding the fulfillment, realizing that you are fulfillment, because we are God, we are source. So creation's already done, like all those realities already exist. But I think most people are living in a concept where that is just, you what now? Like they, like even for me, like, you know, I always say it on like on a daily basis, you know, there's times where I'm going, oh fuck this and fuck that. And it's like, even that is just basic human giving their power away to the man, to the matrix. Oh, you know, this, I always go, oh, this bill's come in, or, you know, like, you know, something's gone wrong on the car or whatever it is. And it's like, why are you letting that bother you? It's just completely irrelevant.
There's a there was a post I saw, and it was there was, what's a phrase that you despise or something, and I was clicking on the comments, and one of the ones I saw most was it is what it is.
Oh,
People just,
I love that though. I go, at the end of the day, it is what it is. Those
it
are
is what it
my
is. But if you take that concept, it is what it is. It's like saying I am that I am.
Yes,
It's
it is.
exactly the same. So I'm like, what is it about it? So I love human behavior. That's why I'm doing my studies right now. I've always been intrigued with human behavior and language, phrases and language and how we say things. And it's when we go back to what I learned years ago from Wayne, because Wayne's always been a big spiritual teacher of mine, is he talks about the ego. And what I've realized about the ego is like when we focus on it too much, it just becomes this like darkness. And I think the ego is needed because it keeps us alive, keeps us safe, keeps us away from shitty things. Doesn't want us to be, it's a part of us. And that's why this death of the ego, like I don't agree with any of that because there's no death of the ego. It's a part of you. It's a part of you. It's like saying, hey, I want to get rid of my heart, go on, go. It's not, it's part of who we are. And I think he talks about, like, he says ego stands for edging God out. And one thing he said, and it always sticks with me, is if we let the ego run the show, that's when we're in that not aligned state. And the ego looks to be offended because it's always looking to affirm all of those wounds that you have. If one of your core wounds is, I'm not good enough, if that's one of your core wounds and you're not doing any work, you're not doing any subconscious work, your ego, part of you, will literally scan your environment to look for things that confirm, I am not good enough.
Yeah.
So it's always looking to be offended. And I see it with friends. I see it with everyone. Like something happens in their life and it's like they're offended. They're instantly offended. And this isn't to judge anyone. This is just to say, can we just like, I teach self-awareness. Self-awareness is the biggest tool you can give yourself. Because when that comes into your life, you have a choice to be like, am I going to let this ruin my day? Like you said, the car breaks down and you need to go and get a new radiator and it costs a lot of money. You might not have that money in the bank, but can you look for the blessing in that? Okay, you might not be able to get to work, but is there other, look at the ripple effect of it. So, okay, let's use the car as example. Your radiator is just blown out and you need to go and get a new radiator and it's going to cost £500. Okay. You haven't got £500 right now, but you might have next month once you get paid. But then think about like, hey, universe, thank you for that £500 and that I desire to fix the car. It'll come in different ways. Your mum and dad might lend it to you, your partner might lend it to you, you might just find it, you just don't know. But if it doesn't come to you in money form, what's the deeper experience there, or the deeper blessing there is that you might be off work for 2 or 3 days, but you might get sick. You just don't know in the moment. Like there's something happening. Like even coming off the plane yesterday when we got home, it was like there was a delay in the bags, and you can see everyone like, oh, because it's like midnight, and everyone's like, just it's funny because you just watch people around the conveyor belt for the bags. Everyone's like, just and I could feel me wanting to do it because we all we bounce off each other, that energy field. We're all like so close together, and I just looked and I said, you know what, there could be something divinely happening right now with timing.
Yeah.
And isn't it a beautiful way to look at things like that? Like, yeah, you might have some really shitty things happening to you, but everything's temporary. It really is. Life on this earth is temporary. It's a speck of sand in just how big the universe is.
Mm.
And it just, when you start thinking of that, like one of mine and Chris's, like one of our kind of practices on a clear night, because the star system here is unbelievable. We'll go outside with a cup of tea and put our like dressing gown on. We'll do stargazing because he loves astronomy. He loves all that. He's a science nerd. So we'll sit out and go, where do you think that one is? And what do you think's going on there? Do you think there's life there? And we just go into these deep. That's a spiritual practice for me. I love it so much.
Mm. I love stargazing as well. I only know a few of the like constellations, but I'm not too shabby. But what you said about your analogy of at the airport, I think sums it up perfectly. Is like, why are those people stressing? And the answer is because they're probably rushing to get home, or they're rushing to be at a different point in time. And it's like, we just need to be here now. And actually, the more we move into that state, the quicker we actually collapse all the resistance and speed up the process. So I'm sure it's like if everybody was just like collectively moving into that space, probably the delay on the baggage would have probably miraculously sped
Well,
up.
it's like the one that everyone gets offended on is traffic. Like we don't have as much traffic here, thankfully, but I know in the UK traffic is just horrendous. And how many times are you stuck in a traffic jam? Like most days for people. And that becomes the start of your day. So we spoke about this all the time when I did a couple of events, was if you're getting up out of bed and you stump your toe and then the coffee spills or whatever, and you're just on this spiral of like, oh, my day's shit, and then you start affirming that your day's shit. So what's going to happen then is that you're going to look for shit that makes your day shit.
Yeah, you keep
So traffic's going to offend you, and your boss is going to offend you, and your clients are going to, whatever it is that happens. But for me, if I'm stuck in traffic, when I was in the UK, I was like, oh, great, I get an extra half an hour to listen to my favorite podcast or my favorite music or ring a friend or leave a voice note for someone. Just look for nuggets of blessings. That's what I like to say is nuggets of blessings, because you might be delayed for a reason. How many people have you heard the stories of 9/11? The people who didn't go in that day?
Yeah.
They were sick or they missed the train or they were stuck in traffic, and they're like they completely shifted their life. They've like some went really religious, some had a big spiritual quantum shift. They were just like, I was saved. And they think like, God saved them, which is, it's beautiful to think that. But I'm like, you probably saved yourself because you woke up that day and that wasn't meant to be your day. That wasn't your time, and that's a really deep way of looking at it, but it's you're being delayed for a reason.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And you do just have to trust that even though the hindsight's not available yet, like it will be. And as exactly what you said, all situations, all conditions are temporary. So with that knowledge, why give stuff that's going on around you right now in the present that you don't want, all those unwanted conditions, why would you give them so much power and emphasis and meaning when they're not permanent anyway? Because then you just continue to amplify them in your reality. Like one of my phrases that me and my client use, we go, it's not that serious. Like, why are we taking this so seriously? But what you said about the like language, like when you said earlier, you said we like to say that we have tendencies rather than that solid affirmation of like, I am a people pleaser, because we don't want to carry that forward. But I think it's good to recognize, isn't it, is that we've all got subconscious programming, we've all got trauma, and the people pleasing comes from that place. And it's just recognizing and saying, look, there's, in my programming, in my subconscious code, there's been like glitches that tend to lean it that way. But it's just saying, isn't it? It's like smoothing that out. And as well, what you also said, because it's just come back to me about what you said about the secret, and if you can't really tap into deep gratitude today for specific things because you're kind of going, well, I don't have the shit that I want, is coming back to the basics. And it's doing what Abraham Hicks says about the go general, isn't it? It's like, I like the way that the grass smells. I like being like, I like the way my duvet feels against my skin. I like the way that this feels in my hands, so on and so forth. Just like very sensory, small, it's like small pleasures, isn't it? Rather than it needing to be all about these like big wins, big milestones all of the time.
Yeah.
Which is I mean, that's such a hamster wheel that.
Yeah, I think the one that comes up a lot is money, isn't it? Like I said to Chris coming home, we do a lot of like chatting on the plane, and I believe every person on this planet wants wealth, in the form of money. There's not one person on this planet that wouldn't want wealth. There's a desperate need for wealth. And I think when we realize that money is an energy, I have moments where I'm like, I've been doing my coaching business for 6-7 years now, and it's never got to the place I've wanted it to money wise. And I think to myself at times, I have days where I'm like, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right thing I should be doing? I have those doubt days which come and they go. And when I'm in those doubt days, I allow myself to be heard and seen and listened to. And that's really important because I don't want to shove it away and be like, oh, you're no good for me. That you've got to give yourself that grace, to listen to what you, because that's how you find out more about yourself. I call myself out on my bullshit all the time. And my ugliness, like I have ugly parts that I don't particularly like, but they're there because they're just part of my trauma and subconscious, programming. But when we start calling ourselves out on our BS, which doesn't look nice sometimes, there's nothing that can stop me from being disliked because it's like there's parts of ourselves we don't like. That's everybody. And so then I'm like, if I know myself completely, unconditionally, I can go out in the world and be fully myself. Because no one can come at me and say, oh, well, Pip's da 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 da. Because I'm like, well, I already know that. Thanks. You know what I mean? Like, it's just this self-awareness is like massive for me. And I'm finding more about myself all the time. I say it with Chris. I'm like, oh, I didn't like that about what I said yesterday or what I was thinking. Like, oh, it just didn't feel right. But when it's like coming into that full circle of, healing and inner work, and it's part of my daily thing now. Like I see things come up in my life and I'm like, that's happening and why is that happening? And just getting curious. Like the human race is curious. It's curious. And I think we could go down many rabbit holes on different podcast episodes about like toxic positivity and spiritual bypassing and all these like conspiracy theories. And there's just this like there's still this dread and darkness hanging over a lot of us, and I just choose to see the light. I just choose to focus on what I can focus on and the things that I don't need to focus on. And I know when I'm feeling anxious or like when I have those doubt days, like, oh, money or what. And it's funny because when you get into those days where like, your bank's dropping down a little bit and you're like, oh God, we've got these bills coming up. We're gonna have money. And it's always there. It's never. And if we do struggle for a few days, it's not that serious. I'm not losing my house. I'm not losing my, I'm not losing anything. I am just experiencing something. And it's like you have to surrender in that moment of being like, my purpose is joined to Chris's purpose, and we've made that clear because I know that I manifest for him, and it's really strange. It's like it's funny because I wanted him to work from home full time, so we got this new job last year, and now he's working from home full time. And he's like, you can manifest for other people. I believe that. I really truly believe that.
Completely. I believe in that 100% because the way I see it is that, especially where like if we are all source and there's multiple people that have got a collective intention channel towards something, that's very powerful. But I also think that, especially because Chris will be looking at you and going, I know my Pip is powerful. And it's the same as like, if I said to you, Pip, will you manifest this for me? You go, yeah. And if you said, Esther, will you manifest this for me? I'll go, yeah. And it's that, for me, it's that kind of like, I feel like it is again, though, it's almost like putting the trust and the power in something outside of yourself rather than through yourself. But I think it helps people release resistance. Like I used to write things down for people all the time and I'd say, oh, I've put you on my manifesting list.
Yeah, I do that.
And then the next thing I know, like they've massively chilled the fuck out. Like the resistance has just dissipated and suddenly things are happening for them. So I love that you manifest for Chris. I need to manifest.
Well, it's service to others, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
that it is service to others. Like there's an element where I read somewhere that if you want to manifest for others, it's to help with the people pleasing aspect. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. But I'm like, I get why they're saying that. But I'm like, if I'm doing it because it's part of my values, like if I manifest for other people, isn't that service to others? And the thing is, like, if Esther says to me today, Pip, can you help me manifest a new client? Okay. She's already wanting to manifest that. Like, that's in her vision, that's in her field. Just by adding it to my field, it's not dampening her field. It's when it comes across as like, I don't feel like I can manifest. Can you manifest for me instead? That's where we want to watch why we're asking that. But when, like, look at the collective meditation across the world. When we do that, it has massive impacts across the world. So manifest for each other is really powerful because it's like Wayne says that, service to others is that what I want to manifest, want it more for someone else.
Yeah, and that's true abundance mindset, isn't it? Because if you were like, look, I know I want this for myself, but I also want that for this person, and even if they got it before me, I'd still be happy for them. That's absolute inner trust
Yeah.
and security that you are still going to get what
And
you
that's the shift I've made, because I would look at like
want.
all these other coaches and be like, oh, why am I not there yet? Why am I not like at the 10-figure months? And it used to absolutely drive me insane,
Mhm.
you know, and I stopped following a lot of coaches that were like, oh, I've made 30K this month, or just constantly. It just became a trigger for me. And I wasn't to judge them and be like, it's wrong. It just was a trigger for me. So I pulled away from that and thought, just focus on Pip, just focus
Yeah,
on
yeah,
me,
yeah,
because I know with the money I desire, I know where it's going to go.
yeah.
Like, I know that I have people I want to just send money to and help. And like,
Mm.
there's a purpose for that money. It's not just because I want money and it's like mine. It's like, well, there's an element of, listen to this, how powerful this is. I sat with that desire, and it's funny because there's, when I think about wealth, so Chris and I are manifesting $1 million right now.
Mhm.
And we got the $1 million check. We've done it all basic, you know, gone to basics. And I remember saying, like, when I get $1 million check, my thought process was, well, I want to send X to this person and this and that. And that was the problem, is that I'm thinking of other people before myself. Now, that's just because I'm a lovely, kind, caring person. But the shift I had to make was, okay, there's $1 million there. What do I want to spend for myself first? Because that first. That doesn't mean I'm not going to send to other people. It's just that there was a little shift in like the people pleasing behaviors that I have, is like this desire to, you know, give money to other people, because there's trauma around that from my childhood of, you know, I grew up with wealthy parents, and you know, I just felt like you know, I had to give to others and things like that. So I watched that part of my, you know, my trauma playing out of like, when I've got this money, I want to do X, Y, Z with it. But hang on, fill my cup first, you know. So that was just that little bit of an element, like, you know, shift in my perspective.
Yeah, and I think it comes really nicely back to the similar energy of like, I don't have to have a sob story to be
Yeah.
worthy this way, this, that, and the other. But it's also like, I don't have to, I'm not saying that you don't have to have good intentions, but like good intentions for yourself is also allowed. Like, it's not that you're being selfish. You know, you'd still give to other people, but it's just like you say, it's all like, it's all nuances of energy. And I think the self-awareness piece to go, right, how am I speaking? How am I showing up? And looking at all of that and going, where's that coming from? And being able to intercept to create changes. Because to me, as soon as you show up differently, you'll get a different result in manifestation. But the self-awareness is so key, because most people are just going along just like blinkered to the way in which they're showing up for life and going, oh, I keep going through the same patterns. And it's like, yeah, because you keep showing up from the same places, whether it is of the ego, the trauma, whatever it is. And until you suddenly, it's that thing, what you were just saying about like when you have a bad day and you get anxiety and stuff, learning to observe yourself, not identifying with that anymore and being like, oh my God, like, I'm feeling this, and you kind of becoming a slave to the thoughts and the feelings, and actually just going, I'm feeling some kind of way. Where's this coming from? Observing it, but not allowing that to run the story. But most people are letting all of that stuff run the show.
Well, what's the most common feeling that people feel? And it's anxiety. And when we tap into what anxiety is and what it feels like the body isn't in alignment.
Mhm.
And it also feels like you're not living in truth. You're not living your truth.
Mhm.
You're not living in, it's like that. There's two elements. There's the alignment and there's the truth. So there's an element of, there's a shift. Like, where are you not being true to yourself? Where are you not putting self first? Where are you not in alignment in life? And that's why anxiety shows up so deeply in the body, because your body's like, hey, listen to me, please.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, when we have that self-awareness, we feel it. Like, you know, Chris and I will always say, you know, I've got a bit of anxiety today. And he's like, where do you feel it? I'm like, it's in the heart. And you just feel into it. What's the heart saying? What is it saying? Like, oh, you know, I feel like shit today. Or, you know, anxiety has a voice.
Mm.
Give it a voice. Like, I can't wait to go watch Inside Out 2 because they brought anxiety into the mix. So it's
Yeah.
like there's an element to it. There's a place for anxiety. Like, we don't, like we say, we want to get rid of anger and rid of this. No, 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 we don't. Like, we want to feel humanness, like we're having a human experience. So feel into what is anxiety saying to you. When we feel angry, how can we channel anger? How can we release anger in a healthy way? There's always a voice for each of them. Imagine like Inside Out, like that's how I envision it. Like they're all different colors, and you will, mine can be Disney, mine are all Disney villains. So mine are all Disney villains. And I'm like, what do you want to say today? Come on, Ursula, let's go. And she's like, wah, 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 wah. And I'm just so, okay, thanks. That makes it fun for me though, and it makes it less serious. And I'm like, okay, great. And I get to know myself.
But it's so powerful, and it's a really great way of looking at it because do you know what? For some reason, I thought you were going to bring up Inside Out. It's like if anybody's obviously watched Inside Out, you've got Joy, and I fucking hate Joy. Sorry, as a character, I can't stand her. She's an absolute pain in the ass. Because she's like, "Fuck you, sadness," like the whole time. Literally,
She's just bossy and she's controlling, and it's like, but I like how they make her that way because that's kind of like joy can't be ruling your life 24/7. We can't be joy and
no,
happiness 24/7. We
no.
can't.
And I love like how the core memory balls, like,
Mm,
they're all meant to be golden. And in the end, like that ball has that duality of the gold and the blue. And it's just a really, really amazing way to look at it. Like you said, anger, anxiety, these are all things not to shun, but with that, like that is all one. It's all part of the human experience that we're now in. Looking at all of that stuff and going, what is this teaching me? What is this showing me? How can I use this to alchemize this to guide me back to love? But when I get back to love, usually if you've processed that, the expansion, the awareness is on another level until the next time when the next thing comes around. Pip, before we wrap up, is there any other, I always say pearls of wisdom, like I'm some sort of old granny. Have you got
nuggets.
nuggets, golden nuggets, babes, that you would like to impart to our lovely listeners before we go?
I've touched on it before, but depending on who's listening, I know your audience will be range from different, we're all in different parts of our life. Is if it gets too much, like I'm a big person for don't let things overwhelm because I get overwhelmed quite easily. I don't know if anyone else feels like, they're overwhelmed kind of is take a break from things. I think sometimes we can get so wrapped up in manifestation that we're like, oh my God, oh. I was like that all the time. I was like, every day I wanted to do manifestation and meditate every single day and get in nature every single day and do this every single day. And it just became too much for me. And I think that's the element of like, inner work is that if you don't meditate every day, God isn't going to go, well, you're not going to get manifested. It just, there's just take the pressure off yourself. Like we're living a life as well. Like I've got two stepkids, I've got a husband, I've got a house to clean, I've got my work, I've got my study. Like I just, again, I stopped focusing on what doesn't matter. Like if the dishes aren't in the sink till the next day, so what? Like I just took off the things that don't really matter. And on the days, my biggest nugget is don't wait until you feel rock bottom to ask for help and support. I've done that before where you're just like, I can't do it anymore. I need help. If you're feeling like the best you've ever felt, still have that call with your therapist or your healer or your coach or whatever, because in those moments of like, I feel so good today, and you have one of those great days and you emanate in love, like that, your coach will, I know from my personal experience, I love it when my clients are like that. They come in and they walk here into my sleep out, and I'm like, oh, they're on form today. I'm like, this is awesome. And I just love being in that energy with them because they're like, I had this light bulb moment and I just sit there and I don't speak, and that's not like me because I love talking, but I'm just looking at them like, I'm so proud of you. It's like, so don't wait for those rock bottom moments to just ask for help. It's through all the emotions, all the roller coasters, and the coach wants to be there and the healer wants to be there through all of it. And remember that you are your own healer. I do healing work, but I don't heal you, you heal yourself. So we just ignite that healing wisdom within you.
Mm,
And just remember that manifestation is easy.
yeah.
It's easy.
And I think the thing you've just said about like you are your own healer, sometimes I will think about what I would say to somebody else. And usually I'm like, actually, my own wisdom is my own medicine. Like I've already got the answers inside me. It's just like
Yes.
sometimes just don't listen to ourselves, do we? But that's a great thing, isn't it, about having a coach or a therapist, is you give yourself that space to hear yourself, to speak it out, to
Well,
like,
we ignite the answers for them. That's one thing I learned of being a good coach is we can sit with the client and be like, I know why they're feeling that way and I know why. But I can't sit there and say, well, I know why. It's in unlocking them to understand why. They have the answers, they have the wisdom, and that makes a good coach.
yeah, exactly. A good coach will ask you lots and lots of questions, guys.
Yes.
And like just telling you stuff. Although sometimes I will, it's almost like having a reading. I'll go, does this resonate? And then I'm like,
Yeah.
I go, if I've got it wrong, I said, you can tell me. And they go, no. They're like, that is correct.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
but yeah, you're so right, Pip. And that's just something for people to be aware of. I think if you are looking for somebody to support you.
Yeah.
Pip, how can people get in touch with you and like connect with you and your beautiful podcast?
Well, I'm very approachable, so if you message me, I will message you back. I'll probably send you a voice note because I love voice notes. Instagram is where I hang out mostly. I'm trying to not hang out on Facebook as much because Facebook's just, whoa, just at the moment, I'm like, no, it just is too much on Facebook for me at the moment. So find me on Instagram. I am Pippa Leslie. Leslie is Leslie. My website is the same, iampipaleslie.com, and I've got my podcast with beautiful Shawi here in New Zealand. I phased out Conscious Convo just talking on my own. I'm like, oh, I was just talking to a mic, and I'm like, I just want someone there, like I just love talking to people.
I don't want to do it. Like that's why I've done this, is me and guests. I don't want to
Yeah,
just,
I shifted with it. So the Conscious Convo is still there if you want to listen to it. It's going to be available for like the next few months online. But the Wisdom of Womanhood, we actually talk about really taboo topics on there as well. So stuff that, we just do because it needs to be spoken about. So they're mostly where I'm at. But yeah, message me anytime. I love hearing from people.
oh, and like Pip, you've just given so much gold on this podcast, and I'm sure everybody felt your magic and your heart. Like your heart feels incredibly open and just so incredibly warm. So I'm sure people will be getting in touch with you. Guys, thank you for listening to the Manifesting Happiness podcast. Thank you for accepting Pip and I in our pajamas, just being our authentic selves. And we hope that we also give you permission to just show up as your authentic self. You don't have to always be all glam and this, that, and the other. You just have to be yourself and trust that your vibe and your tribe will come to you. I'm sure people would agree. Can we get an amen?
Amen.
And we will catch you in 2 weeks for the next episode. And Pip, again, thank you so much for being here.
You're so welcome. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye.